In every age, there comes a moment when a civilization must face itself, when the illusions that once held it together begin to fade. This is that moment. A story not of one person, but of an entire generation standing at the edge of change. A world built on progress and ambition, now haunted by the cost of its own success. From glittering skylines to abandoned towns, from the voices of the forgotten to the silence of those in power, this is a portrait of imbalance. The system promised opportunity, yet left millions behind. It sold a dream, and somewhere along the way, the dream became a burden. This isn't just about wealth or politics. It's about trust, identity, and the quiet collapse of what people once believed was unshakable. So what happens when the very foundation begins to crack? When the pursuit of prosperity turns into a race for survival? This is the story of a world unraveling, and the search for what might be born from its ashes.
Every few years, something breaks. Markets crash, jobs vanish, confidence evaporates. We call it a downturn, a crisis, a recession. But what if these collapses aren't mistakes? What if the chaos is part of the design? An echo built deep into the foundation of the system itself. Across history, the pattern never fails. Every 4 to 7 years, the fall returns. It's given many names: depression, meltdown, slump, collapse. Yet they all mean the same thing. The cycle resets. Wherever this system has taken root over the past 3 centuries, it has lived by one rhythm: expansion followed by destruction, creation followed by collapse. The world calls it capitalism. And though it brought prosperity, invention, and wealth beyond measure, it also carries an inherent flaw: instability. Periodically, the machine falters. Factories go silent. Workers are cast out. Businesses fold. Governments tighten their belts just when their people need them most. A loop that repeats itself endlessly. Boom, bust, recovery, repeat. When the crash hits, it strikes from every direction. Individuals lose their jobs, and when their income disappears, so does the government's tax revenue. The very system designed to save them finds itself starving for funds. The result? A deeper descent. Unless the collapse is massive enough to demand rescue, the response is silence, until the next wave arrives. Today, the question echoes again. Are we heading into another recession? But perhaps that's not the right question at all. The better one is, when? Because history has already given the answer. The rhythm never lies. The last major fall came in 2020 during the global pandemic. That was 5 years ago, right inside the familiar window of 4 to 7 years. The clock is ticking once more. But to understand why these crashes happen, we have to look deeper, beyond the headlines, beyond politics, into the mechanics of how the system breathes. When working people earn, they spend. Their wages circulate back into the world, buying goods, paying bills, keeping shops alive. Every purchase becomes someone else's income. Every transaction keeps the machine turning. The money moves in a circle. Your spending becomes my wage, and my spending becomes yours. But the story changes with business. Unlike workers, businesses can choose. They can invest, or they can wait. When the outlook looks promising, profits are reinvested. New machines, more workers, bigger factories. The flow continues, the economy hums. But when the horizon darkens, fear sets in. Business owners hesitate, holding on to their profits instead of putting them back into circulation. And when they do, the circle breaks. Workers expecting orders don't get them. Those workers, in turn, cut their own spending. Their reduced demand ripples outward, freezing other businesses, slowing production, drying up income everywhere. The slowdown becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Confidence fades. Fear takes the wheel. A recession begins not in one moment, but in countless quiet decisions, each made in boardrooms, each motivated by doubt. The irony is brutal. In trying to protect themselves, businesses end up creating the very collapse they fear. It's a built-in contradiction, an endless loop that powers and poisons the same system. And it happens again and again, without fail. When uncertainty spreads, even the smallest tremor can rattle the world. Trade disputes, new tariffs, or political tensions. Each adds a layer of unpredictability that ripples through the global economy. Businesses hesitate, investors retreat, the flow of money slows, and the cycle begins its descent. Across boardrooms and trading floors, uncertainty becomes the invisible enemy. No one knows where to invest, what to build, or when to expand. Should companies risk growing today, or wait for stability that may never come? In moments like these, hesitation spreads faster than opportunity. And in an economy built on confidence, fear itself becomes the spark of collapse. The truth is stark. When businesses choose not to invest, they're not simply pausing growth. They're pulling a vital thread from the fabric of the entire system. The wages that might have been paid, the materials that might have been ordered, the innovations that might have been born, all vanish into hesitation. The slowdown multiplies. And before anyone can act, the wave of recession has already begun. The irony is profound. A system driven by private profit relies on continuous motion, yet it gives every player the freedom to stop. And when too many stop at once, the gears lock. What follows is predictable. Layoffs, bankruptcies, shrinking demand, and widespread uncertainty that feeds upon itself. But the danger doesn't end there. Sometimes, the forces that cause the slowdown also raise prices. When trade barriers and tariffs increase costs, the result is a double blow. Prices rise even as the economy weakens. This fusion of inflation and stagnation, known as stagflation, is one of the most destructive combinations a modern economy can face. When goods become more expensive but wages stop growing, every paycheck buys less. Families struggle, businesses downsize, and fear hardens into reality. The paradox deepens. The very measures meant to protect national industries begin to choke them. The system begins to turn on itself. And yet, this instability is not new. It's woven into the DNA of the economic order that has dominated the world for centuries. Each crisis sparks debate, blame, and reform. But the deeper truth remains untouched. Instability is not a bug, it's a feature. It is how the system resets, redistributes, and redefines power. Throughout modern history, governments have tried to manage these cycles. Some cut interest rates, others inject cash or promise stimulus packages, yet none can escape the rhythm entirely. Each attempt to stabilize the economy is a patch on a storm-tossed ship, holding steady only until the next wave arrives. The world's financial markets thrive on confidence, but confidence is fragile, built on perception rather than certainty. When it breaks everywhere, investors rush to safety, currencies tumble, stock markets swing violently between greed and fear. And behind the numbers, behind the percentages scrolling across the screen, are millions of lives. Workers, families, small business owners, all tied to a system that cannot stand still. For those at the top, recessions are disruptions. For those below, they are disasters. Because while profits can be recovered and investments diversified, a lost job, a shuttered store, or a home foreclosed often means years of rebuilding. And yet, every collapse is treated as a surprise, even though history warns us, every time, that it's coming. Each downturn exposes the same truth. The economy's greatest weakness is not the decisions made by one person or one nation, but the system's dependence on perpetual growth in a finite world. And every few years, that truth demands to be reckoned with again. The cycle continues. Predictable, yet never preventable. Every few years, the global economy trembles again. The market slows, jobs disappear, confidence fades. We call it a recession, but for millions, it feels more like a reckoning. What's truly happening beneath the surface isn't a random failure. It's a built-in consequence of the system itself. Capitalism thrives on growth, on the endless push to expand. But what happens when the engine slows? When uncertainty creeps into boardrooms and trading floors? Business leaders pull back, investments pause, profits sit idle, waiting for better conditions. That hesitation ripples outward like a shockwave. Factories delay production, workers lose hours, families tighten their budgets. Before long, fear becomes reality. And sometimes, it's not just fear. It's policy. Trade wars, tariffs, and political tensions only amplify the instability. Each unpredictable decision sends new waves of doubt through the markets. Businesses around the world watch and wait, unsure of what tomorrow will bring. Uncertainty becomes the greatest threat of all. This isn't new. It has happened countless times before. Economists give it names: downturn, correction, collapse. But the pattern remains. The people who suffer most are rarely those who caused the fall. The working class, the everyday earners, feel the impact first and hardest. They are told to tighten their belts, while those who caused the chaos remain shielded behind policy and power. And when uncertainty rises, something else begins: stagnation. Prices go up, but wages stay still. Goods cost more, but money buys less. The economy doesn't move forward, yet everything becomes more expensive. It's not just inflation. It's not just recession. It's both at once. Stagflation, the cruel paradox of rising costs and falling confidence. History shows it clearly. Capitalism is not a stable machine. It shakes, it sputters, it stalls, and it demands constant repair. Yet instead of questioning the system, societies often look for someone to blame: a leader, a country, an external force. But the truth is simpler and more unsettling. The instability is not caused by one decision or one administration. It's part of the design. The wealthiest few always seem to find their footing again, recovering faster, expanding wider. The middle and lower classes, however, face longer struggles: lost homes, shrinking wages, broken promises. This imbalance fuels anger, division, and distrust. People begin to look around, wondering why, after every crisis, the same people rise while others fall further behind. And as the years pass, the system becomes even more top-heavy. The richest 10%, the corporations, the financiers, the elite, hold more than half of the world's wealth. The rest of humanity fights for the other half, scraping by while productivity soars and automation replaces labor. It's a modern paradox. Progress that leaves most people behind. But beneath all this data, a deeper question lingers. Every empire that built its foundation on inequality eventually faced collapse. The signs were always the same: overextension, unrest, and decline masked as dominance. The cycle of wealth and crisis, of boom and bust, isn't just economic. It's civilizational. And now, as new powers rise and old ones falter, the same pattern repeats. The empire that once seemed untouchable begins to crack under its own weight. Too vast, too divided, too dependent on endless growth in a finite world. History doesn't repeat itself by accident. It does so because the lessons were never truly learned. The pattern is clear. The system rises, expands, and then falters. Yet each time it happens, we treat it as a surprise, as if the rules have somehow changed. But they haven't. The same forces that built this economy are the ones slowly unraveling it. Every crisis leaves behind a trail. Lost savings, broken promises, fading dreams. And when people look for answers, they often find none. Because the truth is difficult to face. The instability is not the result of bad luck or poor leadership. It is the outcome of a system designed to serve the few at the expense of the many. For generations, this imbalance has been growing quietly, almost invisibly. The top 10%, those who control industries and markets, now hold more than half of all wealth. The rest of society, the workers, teachers, veterans, families, struggle to divide what remains. Each new crisis deepens that divide. You can see it everywhere. In layoffs that leave entire towns jobless, in hospitals that cut staff while costs rise, in students burdened by debt before they've even begun their lives. People are told to be patient, to wait for recovery. But the recovery never feels the same for everyone. For the powerful, it's profit. For the rest, it's survival. And this story, it isn't just about numbers or markets. It's about what happens when a civilization loses balance. History has shown us what follows. Frustration turns to anger. Anger turns to division. And division weakens the very foundation of an empire. The signs are always there. The cracks visible long before the Kyupiu elapse, but they are often ignored until it's too late. Empires throughout time have believed they were different, that they could defy history. Yet every one of them, from Rome to Britain, reached the same inevitable end. Not through invasion, but through exhaustion. When the gap between the rich and the poor grows too wide, When citizens stop believing in the promise of opportunity, when the system feeds on itself instead of the people it's meant to serve, that's when the fall begins. Today, we stand at that same edge. A world driven by profit, competition, and control has forgotten its most essential purpose: to serve humanity. Technology expands, economies grow, but human dignity shrinks. We are producing more than ever before, yet millions live with less. But here lies the turning point. Every collapse carries within it the possibility of rebirth. Every ending leaves space for something new. When the system fails, it forces us to ask what truly matters. Not endless profit, not limitless growth, but balance, equity, and purpose. The story doesn't have to end in ruin. The future is still unwritten. The question is whether we'll learn from the centuries behind us or repeat them once more. Because history has already shown us what happens when inequality becomes too great, when greed outweighs compassion, when empires forget their people. The end is never sudden. It's a slow unraveling, one that only stops when a new generation dares to rebuild differently. So maybe the real question isn't if this system will collapse. It's what comes after. And in that answer, in that uncertain space between failure and rebirth, lies the hope that we might finally create something better. Not a system built to serve wealth, but one designed to serve us all.